Hey guys, hope you liked last week's recipe. This week we're gonna do something a little bit more cooking type recipe, which we're gonna make a beef stew. And this I'm gonna make enough for a couple of dinners. So what we're gonna start with is our beef. I'm using a bottom sirloin tri-tip steak that I'm gonna cut up. If you can't find something like this, you can easily find in the grocery store beef stew cubes, and it'll say for beef stew on it that you can cut into bite-sized pieces. So we're gonna do a beef stew. So next we're gonna have our carrots, celery, and onion. We're gonna have garlic, a couple of cloves, some rosemary and thyme for seasoning, with our salt and pepper, of course. Then I put 2 potatoes here, but I'll probably just end up using 1. Plus I'm gonna do some cremini mushrooms. I prefer cremini mushrooms because it doesn't really have that weird mushroom taste that normal white mushrooms kind of has. So I like it because it'll take the flavor of whatever we're actually eating, which is actually the beef, which is pretty good. Then I'm using some red wine to deglaze our vegetables and our meat. If you can't use red wine for any reason, then you just go right to using the beef stock that we're going to use. This one is just like a concentrated beef stock. I'm just using that to bump up some flavor if I feel the beef stock isn't enough. Then these 2 are just thickeners for the beef stew. So I'll probably use this one. If it doesn't thicken the way I like it, then I usually use some cornstarch, because once it cooks out, it doesn't leave a flavor to it, so that's why I pretty much use that. And so I'll just step back just so that you can see all of our ingredients for our beef stew. So then I'll go and I'll show you what we're gonna do with the vegetables in the next bit. Okay, so now the items that we're gonna be using to prepare the beef stew are, I have a couple of bowls. I have 4. 1 for the vegetables, 1 for the meat, and I have 2 small ones for like the garlic and the herbs, because I'm going to be chopping those up. Then we're going to use a cutting board, chef's knife. I just brought a paring knife because for certain things I like to cut with a smaller knife. A peeler, which is this. It's a different type of peeler than you normally see. A wooden spoon for the pot. And then I have this type of pot. If you don't have a large pot like this, then just use like one of your large soup pots. We'll do the exact same thing. Okay, and then I'll show you what we're gonna do with the vegetables. Okay, so now for the vegetables, I've already cleaned and peeled my carrot, celery, and onion. Basically, I washed my celery and just cut off a little bit of the end and a bit of the tip, because usually the tip is a little dry, so I wanted to remove that. So now we're going to go into cutting the vegetables. I don't like my vegetables too chunky, so we're going to do a small dice and just a simple cut for all 3. So I've already cut 1 onion into 4. So what you can do is you can take 2 pieces, put it on its side like that, and then just cut like so into 4 and put it to the side. Then 1, 2, 3, 4. Move that to the side. So 4 cuts, 1, 2, 4, so. If you're able to do it, unless you need help from your parents, you can do all 4 together, making sure that you keep your hands away from the blade. you can cut like so. And then when you get to the end, you just flip them on their side and you can finish cutting. So you're always going to try to keep your hands curled so that your knife will butt up against it, just in case you're going to, and that way you don't cut the tips of your fingers off. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. Got my 4 pieces. And 1, 2, 3. Tip it on its side. And you can finish like so. And that's your onions. I'll put that in the bowl. Carrots is the same thing, but what we're going to do is we're going to cut it in half. And then we're going to cut that in half. Like so. Always keeping your hands away. And we'll cut that into 3. So 1, 2, 3. Like that, almost like you're doing carrot sticks. And then you're going to small dice that. Making sure that you keep your hands away from the bottom of the knife. And just scoop that up. Put it in with your onions. Another 3 times. So then this one we're going to cut in half. This we'll probably just cut into 2. And it's the narrow end of the carrot. Same thing. Cut it to half. The container. Okay, and then with the small one that I did, just cut there, cut in half. This top piece will cut into 2. And then small piece. And the small little bit, the narrow end, we'll just cut in half. And then just small dice it. Now, if you can't use the knife, then get somebody who can, like your parents or older sibling. There you go. Then we're going to do our celery, which we're going to cut into 3. Top part we'll cut in half. Small dice. Then we'll go into thirds for all 3. This one will be 4. So, and then that. This celery, same thing, into half. 3 and 4. You're just basically making carrot sticks and celery sticks to make your small dice. Then there's your carrot, celery, and onions for the stew. So then what we're going to do is the garlic. Smash it down. And I'm going to use my paring knife just to get the ends. Get it smashed down well. So once you do that, you can easily peel your garlic. So, back in my little compost bowl that I have. And then with the small one. So then what I usually do with my garlic is I will chop it down like so. And then like so. And you're just gonna go and you're gonna mince it up until they become really, really small pieces. So I'll mince this up and then I'll show you what we're gonna do with the herbs, mushrooms, and potatoes. Okay, so now that I have my garlic all minced, as you can see, it's all really fine diced garlic. So that's going to go into a small bowl by itself. So, like so, into a bowl. Now next we're going to do our herbs, and I'll show you how we're going to do that. So rosemary comes on a stick, like so. This is your rosemary. And the way you take rosemary off is you basically can take from the tip and you're basically just going to push down on the stick and it comes right off like so. And then with the tip, you just pick it off and there you go. So I'll do it one more time. So that's the stem. You're going to go somewhat close to the top. You're going to pinch lightly and then just push and it'll come right off. Ta-da. Now for the thyme, same thing. That up later. So with the thyme, same thing. Your stalks are just a little bit different, a little bit smaller. So you would do the same thing, go to the top, and then just lightly push off, like so. Probably use 5 or 6 stems, whatever is still usable. Usually I have a garden in the back that I usually do all my herbs. So then in the summertime, I just go to the backyard and just pick how much I need. Same thing. Good amount. Now stuck together. Almost got a good amount. Just a couple more. say maybe almost looks like a teaspoon, maybe even a tablespoon of thyme. And then basically what you would do is just like the garlic, you just chop it down just so that it's a little bit fine, because you don't want big pieces. You want it to mix well with the sauce that we're going to make. It's basically a beef stew. It's basically just beef with vegetables and a sauce. So you're just basically rocking the knife back and forth. So you basically, because kitchen knives are kind of curved, basically just leave your knife on the cutting board, put your hand like this or like that so your fingers don't touch the board, and then you just rock back and forth on the tip of the knife. See where the curve is? That's where you want to do it. Right? So then you can move the knife back and forth like so. Okay. And then I'll take this and put it into its bowl, because we might not use all of it, but it's always good to have extra, because you can always save it for later. You can put it in like an ice cube tray or a little jar with a little bit of oil, and you can use it for later if you don't use it all. So that is our garlic and our herbs. So then with the potato, I'm just gonna leave the skin on, because I like my potatoes with the skin on. And we're gonna do small diced with this as well. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut it in half, just so that we always have a flat edge on the board. And then we're gonna make a couple slices. 4 slices. Like so, right? And then we're going to do small dice. Plus the potatoes will cook pretty quickly, so. And then also the starch will make it thick as well. And we would probably add this about halfway, just so that they cook, because you can cook it for a long time. You can just leave it and let it get a little tender, and then have it in a couple of hours, or you can make it and then serve it. But I like to make it, have it that day, and then I usually keep extra for another meal. Or what I like to do is a pie shell and some puff pastry that you can get at the store. And I like to make a large pot pie. Potatoes. So put that into a bowl. So, and then with the mushrooms, what we're going to do is we're going to slice them. So I usually take the tips off, the stems off. Put that in my little stock bucket, and you just slice them in half, and then I just slice them. Okay, so now I've done all my mushrooms, my potatoes, my carrot, celery, onion. So now we're gonna cut the beef. So I basically got myself a new cutting board. And we're just gonna open our beef. And I'm gonna show you how we're gonna dice them up. So there's a couple of pieces. So what I like to do is we're gonna make them pretty decent sized pieces. So this one I'm just gonna cut in half, like so. And then just cut them into cubes. Like so. Probably like about 1-inch cubes, something like that. Pretty decent. If it's the stewed beef that are already cut into cubes, I like to cut those cubes in half or in thirds, because sometimes they're a little bit too big. And I don't like chunky beef, especially if it goes into a pot pie. You don't want big pieces of beef and then you get like 1 or 2 pieces and that's it. So then this one, I took my beef out yesterday and I put it into the fridge to defrost, so it's not fully defrosted, but it's pretty, got some solid bits, which is okay because it helps keep it from moving around too much. So there you go. And we want them to leave the fat a little bit because we're going to use that fat to sear the beef when we first start cooking, because we're going to sear the beef first and then we're going to cook the vegetables and then add our beef to the rest. So we want that fat to, it's like bacon. When you cook bacon and the fat cooks down, so that's what it's basically going to do. So it's going to add flavor to the pot. So when we do the vegetables and we deglaze with the red wine, it'll all mix and make deliciousness in the pot for us. Okay. So now that I finished the first pat with you, I'll finish the second one and then we'll go into actually cooking the beef stew. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to make our beef stew. So the first step we're going to do is we're going to put the pot on a high heat, warm up with a little bit of oil. Okay, so we just need a little oil to help sear the beef. So we're going to do that, and we're going to grab our wooden spoon so that we can start doing this. So just move it around. And we want to get it hot so that we can sear our beef and lock in all of the flavor. So here's all the beef that we're going to do. So I'm just going to put there. I'm actually going to move this pan out of the way. All coated on the bottom of the pan. So I'm just going to test it. A couple more seconds. What we're going to do is we're going to drop our beef in. And you want to make sure that you hear the sear. Okay? So if you can't use the stove, please get somebody who can. I'm going to put it all in. and then let it sear on the first side. I'm going to wash my hands. But this is what we're going to do. I'm going to let it sear on its side. You want it to sear on all sides. So you don't really want to move it, but you want to make sure that you hear the sear on the beef. So then I'll show you once I'm done searing all the beef. Okay guys, so here is my beef. This beef has brought out a little bit of liquid, which is okay, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that for when we actually make the sauce. So I'm going to take my beef out of the pan. So I'm going to just put my stove down to low, that way it's still on. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my beef into the bowl. One more minute. Then I put the pan back on, put it back up to high. I grab a little bit more oil, and then I'm going to start the veg. Okay, so I'll it in. Just move it around. So then we're going to start with our carrot, celery, and onions. And we're going to let those saute. Just want to get it all coated with the oil. And let that saute. Get at least the onions start getting golden brown, and then we'll go into the next step. Okay, so the onions and the carrots and celery have sweated, and the onions are starting to turn color. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to add my mushrooms so that I can saute with carrot, celery, and onion and get cooked. So I'm going to let that cook. I'm going to let the mushrooms cook down, and then we'll go on to the next step. Okay, so now that our mushrooms are cooked down enough, we're going to add our garlic, our rosemary, and our thyme. So we're going to add our garlic. And we're going to add a little bit of our rosemary and thyme mix. We're going to leave some for later, just in case we need it. It's always better to put a little bit now and then a little bit later. And like that. Just saute out a little bit so that we can get the flavor. So then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add wine, which will help deglaze the bottom of the pan and get all the good bits up and into the vegetables. is next. So I'll usually put a cup and a half of wine. The cup of wine in our vegetables. And basically we're just going to let that simmer down a little bit and reduce so that it'll be part of the base for our sauce once we add our beef that has the beef juice from when it was searing. And then we're going to add a little bit of the beef broth to the mix once the beef is in. So we're going to let this reduce for a bit, and then we'll move on to putting in our beef and our beef stock. So we're basically reducing down the cup of wine, which is about, maybe want to get it to like a quarter cup. Basically we're just reducing it down and we're cooking out the alcohol. If you can't use the red wine, that's okay, because you can do the beef broth and you just skip this step. One thing we're going to add that I didn't say in the beginning is we're going to use some tomato paste. I get the one in the tubes, but there's little cans that you can get. We're going to add about a tablespoon, maybe 2, like so. That'll just help sweeten up and add a depth of flavor. So we're just helping cutting down the acidity of the wine and just helping to also add more flavor. So the sauce isn't going to be red like you would think it would be. It'll actually turn brown and delicious. Okay, so there you go. And then the tomato paste also helps thicken the sauce in the bottom of the pan. Let's see if I can get it. So the bottom of the pan, it's there. So now I'm going to add the beef with the juice or the water that came out of it. I'm going to put it in our stew. I'm just going to mix that around so we can coat it with all the deliciousness. Then we're going to add our beef broth. And we're just going to pretty much put it until it coats. So probably about maybe 3/4 of the container, like so. Maybe, you know what, let's do the whole thing. That way we use it all up and we don't have to worry. So at this point, what I'll do is I'm going to give it a taste. Not bad, not bad. So what we're going to do is we're going to wait for this to come to a boil. And then we're going to thicken and put our potatoes in. So we'll wait for that to come to a boil. Okay, so as you can see, our beef stew is starting to boil. So So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take my Bisto here, which you can find in the gravy aisle with all the canned and packaged ones at the top of the shelf is normally where I find it. So what I'm going to do is put about tablespoon, 2 tablespoons into a measuring cup, and then I'm going to put a little bit of water to dissolve it. With a spoon, we're going to stir it until it's all dissolved. There's nothing at the bottom. So basically it's like condensed gravy and like beef stock and cornstarch. That's why it's got that brown color. And basically we're gonna put it in like so and just stir it, and what it'll do is it'll start to thicken the actual juice inside the pot. So once it comes to a boil, it'll start thickening. So that's what we're gonna wait for. Okay, so as you can see, it's starting to thicken up just to where I would like it. So what we'll do is we'll start adding the potato. It's a thicker liquid. It hasn't fully thickened because you don't want it to fully thicken, because once we cook with the potato starch will actually help thicken the sauce. So it's pretty nice. So what we'll do is we'll take a taste test again, and then this time we'll start adding our salt and pepper. I'm going to turn it down just a bit. Tastes so good. So now we're going to hit it with a little bit of black pepper. Just a touch of salt. We'll stir that in. And you want to make sure that you taste it, just so that you get it to where you like it and it's not too salty or too peppery. But you want to make sure that you also taste the beef, because that's why you're making it, so that you can taste the beef. Do another taste before I drop the potato in. We're good. So next I'm going to add my potato. And we're going to basically let that cook until they're tender. And then your beef stew is pretty much done. You would do one more tasting to see if the salt and pepper and seasoning is to your liking. And then if it's not thick enough for your liking, then you can thicken it up a little bit more. I like mine just a little bit more thicker, so I'm probably thicken it up with cornstarch, which isn't the classic way of doing it. Usually we would coat the beef in flour, and then we would deglaze, and it would make a roux at the bottom of your pot. Or we would make a butter and flour or an oil and flour roux, which you would then add some of your liquid to and then put into your stew to thicken it up. But this way with the cornstarch, it's a little bit quicker because you're basically just waiting for your liquid to thicken up. Then it's pretty much done. And then you can't really taste it after you're done. And then what I like to do is just add a couple bay leaves, just to add a little bit more flavor. If you don't have them, then don't worry about it. It's just a preference that I like. So then you're basically just waiting until your potatoes are done, and what you do is just test it with a fork. If your fork goes through, then your stew is pretty much ready for you to eat. So I hope you enjoy this video. Thanks guys, bye. Okay, so I've basically waited about 10-15 minutes. I've been waiting for the potato to cook. And what I did is I also thickened it up a little bit more to the consistency of a gravy. And I'm going to put it on the plate for you. So you get vegetables, you get the potatoes, you get meat, a bit more gravy, and basically there is our finished product of our beef stew. Hope you guys enjoyed making this recipe just as much as I did. See you guys in the next one.